In 1950, Western Europe claimed to build a bold new future on human brotherhood. Sitting here in the sovereign archive beneath the green lamp, I see a radically different story written in forgotten bank ledgers. Mainstream history textbooks tell us that moral visionaries created the European Union to end war forever. That explanation is merely a surface narrative designed for public consumption. What nobody knew at the time was that coal cartels dictated the peace. Covert dollar flows and secret intelligence pacts forged the entire structure. History is never driven by lofty political speeches or public ideologies. History is driven by cold balance sheets, unpayable debts, central bank directives, and raw resource control. The true origin of the European Union was a calculated monetary play. In May 1945, the European continent lay physically destroyed and financially ruined. Major metropolitan centers were reduced to endless fields of scorched rubble and shattered concrete. Industrial factories were completely silent. Critical railway lines and bridges were wrecked. Agricultural production had collapsed across France, Germany, and Italy. Sovereign treasuries were depleted. The accumulated gold reserves of European central banks had fled across the Atlantic Ocean to Fort Knox. Millions of returning soldiers and displaced refugees faced immediate starvation in the winter of 1946. Sovereign paper currencies lost all credibility among the civilian population. In Berlin, Frankfurt, and Vienna, official fiat money was completely worthless. Cigarettes, canned meat, and nylon stockings replaced sovereign banknotes as the dominant medium of exchange. Black markets operated openly on every city corner. The human cost of systemic collapse was staggering. Entire family fortunes evaporated overnight as hyperinflation consumed paper savings. The fundamental engine of this post-war economic collapse was a severe dollar shortage across the continent. European nations required vital raw materials, heavy machinery, and grain to rebuild their ruined industrial infrastructure. The United States was the only major power with fully intact manufacturing plants and vast surplus capital. However, European nations could not purchase American goods without physical US dollars. They had no dollars because they had no manufactured goods to export back to American markets. European central banks faced imminent operational paralysis as foreign exchange reserves dried up. Printing additional francs, lire, or marks only accelerated destructive hyperinflation within domestic markets. Rigid price controls produced massive black market shortages of everyday staple goods. Structural trade deficits compounded month after month across Western European nations. The entire European banking system was sliding rapidly toward total insolvency. Traditional monetary levers were incapable of solving this structural liquidity trap. The absolute epicenter of this European industrial crisis was the Ruhr Valley in Western Germany. The Ruhr region contained the highest concentration of deep coal mines and heavy steel production on the European continent. High-grade coking coal from the Ruhr was the mandatory fuel required to power industrial blast furnaces. French heavy manufacturing depended entirely on German coal shipments to produce structural steel for its own domestic reconstruction. German domestic survival similarly required its own coal reserves to power electrical grids and heat frozen cities. A fierce geopolitical battle over energy allocation erupted between decision-makers in Paris and London. French planners insisted on prioritizing coal exports to France to rebuild their domestic industrial base. Meanwhile, German citizens needed those exact same energy resources to prevent total societal freeze and starvation. The distribution of physical carbon became a life-or-death financial calculation. In 1946, French economic administrator Jean Monnet designed the ambitious Monnet Plan for national recovery. The structural objective of this strategy was explicit, cold, and calculated. France aimed to assume direct administrative control over the Saarland and Ruhr industrial basins. French state planners wanted to divert German coal production directly into French steel manufacturing plants. By doing so, France hoped to establish permanent dominance over European heavy industry. Simultaneously, the strategy aimed to cap German industrial production at a fraction of its pre-war capacity. Limiting German heavy industry was intended to neutralize France's historical military rival permanently. Furthermore, The French central bank sought to extract physical capital assets from German territory to back its own devalued paper currency. The policy prioritized immediate French sovereign balance sheets over long-term European regional stability. It was an uncompromising mercantilist resource play. American military authorities viewed this growing Franco-German industrial deadlock with deep frustration and concern. The United States occupation government was spending hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to feed starving German citizens. Keeping German manufacturing capacity artificially restricted guaranteed that all of Western Europe remained locked in economic stagnation. Without a fully functional German industrial engine, Western Europe could never achieve self-sustaining economic recovery. American taxpayers would be forced to fund permanent foreign aid bailouts indefinitely. However, unleashing German manufacturing power terrified the French political establishment in Paris. French leaders threatened political non-cooperation if Germany was allowed to rearm or regain unilateral control over its industrial cartels. The Western alliance was paralyzed by a massive structural deadlock. The mounting threat of Soviet military expansion made this economic paralysis extremely dangerous for Western capital. By late 1947, traditional balance of power diplomacy had reached a complete dead end. Unpayable sovereign debt obligations were compounding rapidly across every European capital. Cross-border trade was frozen because national paper currencies were entirely non-convertible. Commercial banks refused to extend new lines of credit without verified physical collateral. The historic nation-state framework could no longer manage modern interconnected supply chains or international energy flows. Private investment capital fled from Europe due to fear of political revolution and currency devaluation. A radical monetary and administrative intervention was required to break the structural deadlock. The shadow architects of international finance recognized that national sovereignty itself had to be restructured. A brand new supranational mechanism was urgently required to bypass domestic parliaments and control resource distribution from above. In June 1947, United States Secretary of State George Marshall announced the European Recovery Program. The massive financial program was publicly known as the Marshall Plan. Over 4 years, the United States injected over $13 billion of direct capital into 16 European nations. In today's terms, that monetary injection equaled hundreds of billions of inflation-adjusted dollars. The official public narrative celebrated unparalleled American generosity and selfless international solidarity. However, internal central bank ledgers revealed a cold economic strategy. The Marshall Plan was designed to save American export industries from a sudden domestic liquidity collapse. American factories were producing massive industrial and agricultural surpluses following World War II. Europe desperately needed those goods but lacked the gold and dollar reserves to pay for them. By transferring dollars directly to European governments, Washington created the exact purchasing power required to buy American exports. The funds flowed from the United States Treasury straight to European central banks. European authorities then allocated those dollars to local commercial enterprises to buy American tractors, industrial oil, and wheat. The dollars circled directly back into the balance sheets of major American corporations and Wall Street banks. Furthermore, recipient European states were required to sign strict bilateral agreements with Washington. They agreed to balance their sovereign budgets, stabilize their currencies, and eliminate import tariffs on American goods. They were also forced to join the Organization for European Economic Cooperation. This agency monitored national economic policies and enforced regional integration under direct American oversight. Behind the diplomatic curtain, American intelligence agencies executed a clandestine campaign to accelerate European political integration. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Washington financed the entire European integration movement in secret. In 1948, senior American intelligence officials established the American Committee on United Europe. The chairman of this private organization was William J. Donovan, former chief of the Office of Strategic Services. The vice chairman was Alan Dulles, who later became director of the Central Intelligence Agency. The board consisted of leading Wall Street financiers, corporate lawyers, and foreign policy elites. This non-governmental front organization served as a covert channel for classified state funds. It targeted influential European political leaders, media executives, and academic institutions to promote the federalist agenda. Declassified intelligence records exposed the vast financial apparatus managed by the American Committee on United Europe. The organization funneled millions of dollars into pan-European political movements like the European Movement. The CIA utilized major philanthropic institutions, such as the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, as financial conduits to obscure the money trail. CIA operatives paid secret retainers to European politicians, sponsored favorable media coverage, and financed federalist research institutes. Think about that for a second. The entire modern European order was bought with covert American capital. And no, I'm not making that up. The CIA literally funded the European movement through foundation fronts. Washington demanded a unified European market to contain Soviet influence and secure permanent access for American multinational corporations. The essential operational architect on the European side was Jean Monnet. Monnet was not an elected political leader or a public statesman. He was an international investment banker, former Deputy Secretary General of the League of Nations, and commercial strategist. Throughout both world wars, he coordinated Allied shipping boards and military purchasing missions in London and Washington. Monnet maintained direct access to Wall Street banking executives and top officials in the United States Department of State. He recognized that European citizens would never vote to surrender their national sovereignty in a public referendum. Direct democratic votes on European unification would meet immediate political rejection. Monnet advocated a gradual strategy called functionalism. Critical economic industries would be merged under technocratic control first. Political integration would follow as an inevitable economic consequence. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything. Steel producers wanted price controls, not brotherhood. On May 9, 1950, French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman delivered a famous address known as the Schuman Declaration. Jean Monnet had drafted the entire text in absolute secrecy alongside corporate lawyers and industrial bankers. The plan proposed pooling French and German coal and steel production under a single supranational high authority. The project was immediately open to other European nations. The official public narrative portrayed the proposal as a moral crusade for lasting peace. In financial reality, it was a legal instrument to construct a supranational heavy industry cartel. The agreement guaranteed resource access for French mills while insulating German producers from Allied production caps. In April 1951, 6 European nations signed the Treaty of Paris, formally establishing the European Coal and Steel Community. The participating states were France, West Germany, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. The treaty established the High Authority, an independent 9-member executive body located in Luxembourg. This supranational board possessed unprecedented administrative powers over private and state industries. It could set mandatory production quotas, fix minimum sales prices, levy direct taxes on companies, and dictate capital investment flows. Member governments surrendered exclusive legal jurisdiction over their heavy industries to unelected technocrats. The High Authority operated entirely outside the control of national parliaments. Industrial conglomerates that previously managed wartime production were integrated into a centralized administrative framework. The financial mechanics of the coal and steel community satisfied key corporate and state interests in secret ways. France secured a permanent, guaranteed supply of high-grade Ruhr coal at controlled price caps. This mechanism subsidized French steel manufacturing at direct German expense. West Germany gained essential political recognition and successfully escaped Allied production ceilings on its heavy manufacturing. The treaty eliminated internal tariffs and trade quotas on coal and steel across all 6 participating nations. Major industrial syndicates gained protected market access while avoiding price wars and aggressive foreign competition. The framework insulated corporate balance sheets from domestic labor strikes and political interference. The operational template for modern supranational corporate governance was established. The commercial success of the initial industrial cartel paved the way for broader economic integration across Western Europe. In March 1957, the 6 member states signed the Treaties of Rome. This historic agreement created the European Economic Community and the European Atomic Energy Community. The treaty systematically eliminated internal tariff duties on all industrial goods traded between member nations. It established a unified external tariff policy for trade with non-member countries. Common regulatory frameworks were created to govern transport networks, capital movements, and labor migration. The focus expanded from heavy industry to building a seamless regional market for consumer goods. Administrative authority was concentrated further within supranational commissions located in Brussels. National regulatory sovereignty was surrendered to market unification. To secure French consent for the European Economic Community, a major financial transfer mechanism was demanded by Paris. French agriculture was highly fragmented, technologically backward, and politically volatile. French political leaders feared that efficient German industrial exports would dominate the common market while French agriculture collapsed. In 1962, the European Economic Community created the Common Agricultural Policy to balance this trade disparity. The policy established artificial price floors for farm products across the entire community. The program was funded through direct fiscal contributions from member states based on their industrial economic output. German tax revenues were systematically transferred to subsidize French agricultural producers. It was a massive wealth redistribution scheme hidden beneath agricultural market regulations. Sitting here in the quiet of the Sovereign Archive, the true blueprint of European unification stands fully revealed. Every expansion step was publicly marketed as a noble defense of human freedom and regional peace. Yet every treaty was meticulously designed to centralize balance sheets, protect cartel margins, and insulate financial decisions from democratic oversight. If you are beginning to see the hidden levers that dictate modern geopolitical history, take a moment to subscribe right now. Join our archive, activate notifications, and help us continue unearthing the suppressed balance sheets of global power. Now, follow the money into the next monetary trap. The paper trail leads directly to central bank balance sheets in Basel. In August 1971, the international financial system experienced severe structural disruption. United States President Richard Nixon unexpectedly terminated the direct convertibility of dollars into physical gold. The Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rates collapsed virtually overnight. Global currencies began floating freely against one another in volatile financial markets. Sharp currency fluctuations threatened to disrupt cross-border trade across the European common market. Volatile exchange rates destroyed the complex subsidy calculations of the common agricultural policy. European business cartels faced immense currency risk when executing multi-year trade contracts. European central bankers realized that a unified market could not survive without a shared monetary anchor. Central bank governors met secretly at the Bank for International Settlements in Basel to design a regional currency peg. In 1972, European central banks created a monetary agreement known as the snake in the tunnel. This system limited the allowable currency fluctuation margins between member currencies. When market pressures broke that arrangement, European leaders created the European monetary system in 1979. They introduced an artificial basket currency called the European Currency Unit. The system effectively linked European currencies to the German Deutsche Mark. The Deutsche Mark was the most stable and inflation-resistant currency in Europe. Consequently, the German Bundesbank became the unilateral controller of European monetary policy. Other central banks were forced to align their interest rates with Frankfurt to maintain their currency pegs. Southern European nations sacrificed domestic growth to defend fixed exchange rates. The ultimate drive toward monetary concentration occurred in February 1992 with the signing of the Maastricht Treaty. This historic document established the modern European Union and created the legal architecture for a single currency. Participating sovereign nations agreed to abolish their national currencies, including the French franc, Italian lira, and German mark. The treaty created the European Central Bank, headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany. The new central bank was granted exclusive statutory authority to issue money and set interest rates across the entire Eurozone. National central banks were converted into regional branch offices executing mandates dictated from Frankfurt. The fundamental sovereign power to print money and set national monetary policy was completely removed from democratic control. The architectural design of the euro contained a severe structural paradox built into its foundation. Monetary policy was completely centralized under the European Central Bank in Frankfurt. However, fiscal policy remained decentralized across individual national treasuries. Member state governments were responsible for managing their national budgets, public services, and sovereign debts without the ability to issue money. Under the old system, a nation facing trade deficits could devalue its currency to restore export competitiveness. Under the single currency, national currency devaluation was impossible. Economic adjustments could only occur through internal deflation, slashing domestic wages, reducing social safety nets, and cutting public expenditure. The structural architecture transferred the entire risk of financial shocks directly onto working populations. When the global financial crisis erupted in 2008, this structural flaw triggered a devastating sovereign debt crisis. Southern European nations, including Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland, faced immediate financial paralysis. During the preceding decade, private commercial banks in Germany and France had flooded peripheral nations with cheap euro loans. When international credit markets froze, these peripheral governments could not service their debts. Because they did not control their own central banks, they could not print money to backstop their domestic banking systems. Yields on sovereign bonds escalated to ruinous levels as default loomed. The European commercial banking network faced catastrophic losses on its balance sheets. The flawed design of the single currency threatened total financial collapse across the continent. The response of the European Central Bank, the European Commission, and the International Monetary Fund was aggressive and uncompromising. This coalition, known as the Troika, forced peripheral nations to accept harsh bailout programs tied to severe austerity mandates. Unelected technocrats were dispatched to Athens, Lisbon, and Dublin to take direct control over national budget decisions. Sovereign public assets, including ports, electrical grids, and municipal water systems, were privatized at fire sale prices to foreign corporate conglomerates. Pension payouts were slashed, public wages were reduced, and healthcare budgets were drastically cut. In Greece, youth unemployment spiked above 50%. Local economies were locked in severe depressions, yet public democratic protests were entirely disregarded by Brussels officials. The official narrative claimed that these massive bailouts were generous acts of European solidarity to assist irresponsible southern economies. That public presentation was a calculated financial lie. Detailed balance sheet analyses revealed that over 90% of the bailout billions never remained in Greece or Spain. The funds were routed through public treasuries and sent directly to pay off unpayable loans held by elite German and French commercial banks. The bailouts were a massive private financial rescue operation funded by European taxpayers. Bad private debts accumulated by reckless commercial banks were converted into public sovereign debt. The financial elite was completely protected from market losses, while working citizens bore the burden through decades of enforced economic austerity. The modern structure of the European Union represents the full realization of Jean Monnet's original technocratic vision. Major policy directives are drafted by unelected commissions, central bank committees, and financial regulators behind closed doors. National parliaments have been demoted to administrative compliance offices executing regulations enacted in Brussels and Frankfurt. When European voters rejected proposed European constitutions in democratic referendums in France and the Netherlands in 2005, political elites simply bypassed the results. They rebranded the rejected constitution as the Lisbon Treaty and ratified it without public votes. Sovereign debt rules and deficit limits permanently enforce fiscal austerity, ensuring that national elections cannot alter fundamental economic policy. The hidden financial history of the European Union reveals an unbroken thread of structural power concentration. From post-war coal cartels and secret CIA funding to single currency mechanics and sovereign bailouts, the trajectory has remained constant. Public ideals of European peace, democratic unity, and borderless solidarity have served as an effective public relations cover for economic cartelization. The financial machinery established in the mid-20th century has expanded into an irreversible administrative framework. Central bank monetary policy, debt monetization, and supranational regulatory mandates govern the daily lives of hundreds of millions of citizens. Sovereignty was not lost by accident. It was systematically exchanged for cartel stability and centralized financial control. As we navigate global economic fragmentation, resource wars, and central bank digital currencies in 2026, the structural history offers vital clarity. The mechanisms of monetary control engineered 70 years ago continue to dictate national policy and individual prosperity. Centralized banking networks and supranational agencies remain the true managers of political outcomes across Western nations. National borders endure on political maps, but actual sovereign authority resides inside the ledgers of central banks and international financial institutions. Understanding this hidden financial machinery is essential to comprehending the real dynamics of global geopolitical power. History is not a collection of heroic political speeches. It is an unforgiving ledger of assets, debts, and structural control. As I lower the green banker's lamp here in the Sovereign Archive, we return to the ledger of 1950. Rhetoric fades, but central debt mechanics endure forever. Leave a currency symbol like in the comments if you decoded the truth. Subscribe and click the next video to uncover the next hidden financial matrix.